Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. The doc is in, Ben. Documentaries, that is. Four more for you on this episode. I'm one of your hosts, East Coast Samuel.
And I'm one of your hosts on Poker Stars Legend of Ben 1. And Sam, since we are going to Las Vegas this summer, I think it's pretty important that we get maybe some souvenirs or something for during our trip. So we'd have like a Sam trinket.
I like it. Sam Trickett. That's right. One of the subjects of our documentaries today, Sam Trickett. Not quite Trinket, close enough. But we've got four documentaries for you this time. Normally we do three. This time we're spicing it up a little bit with four, each with its own take on documentary as a format. We talked about this in last episode, how we've explored a lot of different types of documentaries. We have one that's more or less a YouTube video, not really quite a documentary. And then we have one that's sort of like a TV documentary that aired on television. That would be the Sam Trickett one. I guess another one that's kind of like a TV documentary, and then another one that was released on YouTube that's sort of a documentary, but also like a promotional movie. We'll get into that one, but I'm excited for this one.
It's again, like you say, we've really kind of covered so many different types of documentaries or types of sort of informative videos of sorts. And again, we have a variety pack to kind of cover them. And again, the main focus I think I want to stress here is when it comes to a documentary, it's really about the story that's being displayed and then the execution of that story. And you know, documentaries can have one, but not the other. And it's kind of rare that we ever have both be very successful components of a successful story-driven documentary. So that was my like takeaway from a lot of this viewing experience that we're about to be discussing.
Yeah, I mean, it's good when there's a story that allows that you can build out thematically. Like, for example, in Super Size Me, right? Morgan Spurlock has the story of him doing this experiment, but the stuff that comes with it that's not directly related to his story helps elucidate his story thematically and build out ideas that he brings through his own personal experience with McDonald's. And that's what we're looking at here is, can you tell an individual story and really hone in on that, but also build it out to explore a better experience? And the answer is kind of sort of with these documentaries, as kind of sort of with the previous documentaries we reviewed.
Exactly. And by this point, we've done quite a few episodes about documentaries on the poker world, and we've had episodes cover one, two, three, four, five, and five documentaries respectively in different podcasts. So that's kind of cool. But we're going to start things off with the documentary, 42 minutes long in length, called "Story of the Richest Heads Up Poker Game," featuring Phil Ivey. This documentary, to even call it a documentary, it's really more of a narrator talking over stock footage and like stock footage. So it covers the kind of poker legend of the corporation playing against Andy Beal, a billionaire who dove right into the sort of poker cash game heads up battle with some top pros in the early to mid 2000s. And there's a little bit of an editing trick to this video. He kind of divides things into chapters, so like 6 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So every about 5 or 7 minutes is kind of a different chapter in this video. And it's funny. This really is possibly the best example of a great story, bad execution sort of display here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a story that's been in news articles. I think there's been books written about it. This was a very high profile thing. I mean, a murderer's row of poker players, everybody who was anybody in poker in the early 2000s. I guess like Mike Matusow or somebody was like in the corporation competing against Andy Beal. Yeah, and this guy, I mean, just talks over stock footage, summarizes what the whole story is. And yeah, I mean, it's not a documentary; it's a nonfiction YouTube video. It's not an essay. You don't really learn anything about the narrator himself. He just kind of tells the story. So it's I stopped taking notes about 15 minutes through when I saw what was going on. It's a lot of, Andy Beal is this guy and he plays against the poker players and the poker players beat him. So Andy Beal studies and then he beats them. So then they study and they beat him. So then he studies and they beat, and it just goes back and forth like this, which makes sense with poker. I mean, you're constantly sharpening your game. You're having bankroll issues that you have to negotiate. You're burned out. You want to take some time off. So, I mean, it just goes back and forth between the corporation and Andy Beal. And it says featuring Phil Ivey. Yeah, Phil Ivey pops up as a member of the corporation, but that implies that he's actually in the documentary, which he isn't. So,
Yeah, I was taking notes on each chapter, just kind of writing down what the winnings or losses were for one particular side, just for my own sort of note taking, not because that was particularly important what the numbers were. And it was funny because when I remember hearing about this story, I seem to vaguely recall maybe being told that it was much more lopsided in the favor of Andy Beal before Ivy kind of swoops in to save them. And
mhm,
so I was surprised by just how much money Bill was losing in the early chapters of the story. And then when
mhm.
he actually gets up about multi million on the corporation, about 10 million around the end of chapter 5. Even though he was up 10 million then in that session, he was really, I mean, maybe kind of breaking even, maybe even still down from that point. So the fact that Ivy kind of plays the hero, swoops in and saves the day and wins 16 million on that last component of the battle, it really wasn't like this. We're gonna like be broke if we don't somehow scramble together some funds to get it all back. So it actually, in a sense, kind of made the story less enticing to me as a sort of look back, ironically. And as you say, again, there's just not much in the way of individual moments of intrigue
Mhm.
or drama, because it's just kind of like, no, they change the rules. He loses. He studies. He gets better, but then they change the players, and I mean, the mechanics of how the game would alter from bigger blinds, who's allowed to play, who's not. That's kind of cool. That really could have, I think, in the hands of different video maker or different filmmaker, this could really be quite a story to cover. But the execution here is very lacking for me.
Yeah, and I mean Andy Beal's worth nearly $10 billion according to Bloomberg. So he's, the stakes here. It's like it's millionaires versus a multi-billionaire. So it's not like there's a real like, oh no, Todd Brunson lost $300,000 playing Andy Beal. It's like, okay, he can usually make $300,000.
Mhm.
Just he's splashing around with that amount of cash. He has more cash waiting by. So yeah, I mean the story certainly is kind of interesting, but it's not super compelling to me on face value. And then yeah, the execution just it's a guy talking.
Exactly. So, I really didn't know what to think after watching this video, because I really wanted to have some interviews with the players who played as part of the corporation. I think this could even maybe be a good like Hollywood script movie. Some sort of
Yeah.
uh, the arrogant poker pros think they can beat a billionaire, and the billionaire shows them up, and then like the noble poker like genius hero swoops in and saves the day. I think there could be maybe a little bit cliche, but kind of a fun little fictionalized version could be made here. But as is, definitely skippable unless you are just a poker completionist as far as poker history and poker videos on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to our second of these 4 videos here. This one is called High Stakes, the Story of Sam Trickett, a 49-minute long video made in 2013. I should mention the video for the corporation video was posted to YouTube in 2021. I don't know if that's when it was actually produced. I have no reason to think there's nothing in it that sort of suggests when it was made, but I'm so only going off of when it was posted on YouTube. So the Sam Trickett one, 2013. This one a bit more slick in its cinematography. Again, it does kind of feel like one of those 1 hour TV specials you could have watched sometime in the UK on some obscure channel at the time. And this one covers really events of the early 2010s, basically, for Sam Trickett.
Yeah, I mean, this was when Sam Trickett was a huge star of the game. It wasn't just the one drop, which obviously gets the most attention in this documentary, but also just a lot of really insane runs that he was having, getting 8 cashes in Hold'em during the WSOP, which is insane, getting a second place finish at a different bracelet event, becoming a, big high stakes professional. And it's interviewed with him as well as his girlfriend at the time, his best friend at the time, all sorts of people in his life. So it really gives you a sense of who he is as a person, the connections he's made in his personal life, as well as Antonio Esfandiari gets a couple small interviews, a couple other people in the poker world, but it's really about Sam specifically.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what I like about it, that it's about him as a person rather than just him as a poker player. That edge is in there, but it is, you get to learn more about his personality than other types of documentaries.
So obviously compared to the corporation stuff, this is definitely a better produced, more slick production. Some cinematography is pretty good. But personally, I just didn't really care for how the story was told or detailed. It just didn't seem like we had a concise journey to go through. I mean, we cover his sort of poker origins, how he first had some initial success, and how that sort of increased his prominence in the poker world. Whether it's on magazine covers, winning multi-millions. 2010 was a very big year for him, and then sort of the 2010 to 2012 is sort of the peak Sam Trickett poker era for him, I guess you could say. You check his Hendon mob, he really hasn't had a ton of results in the last decade. Obviously, he's probably stepping away from the game to a certain degree compared to how he was, in his heydays. The 2012 one drop is discussed in some slight detail more than the rest of the documentary goes into for everything else, which is nice because we only really saw the final table in the ESPN broadcast. But really, again, I wanted a little bit deeper, more personal, insightful look into his life, and I didn't quite get what I wanted.
It's a by the numbers television documentary. It's nothing, it's an they made this, they throw it on television. It's not trying to be anything that it's not. We get little bits and pieces about his life, that he wanted to be a soccer player growing up, or a footballer, as they say in the UK. But he wound up instead working for a heating service company. There's a kind of funny moment where he goes to his old boss at the heating service company and tells him about playing poker, and tells him like, "Oh yeah, I've won $16 million playing poker." And his boss like, $16 million. I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah, little moments here or there that I, kind of like. But yeah, it's a mostly by the numbers documentary. They try to hype up the one drop. At the very beginning, they introduce, he's going to be playing in the one drop $1 million poker tournament. Of course, me knowing that he gets second place, it kind of ruins the ending of the documentary a little bit, because he gets second. That's not a good. It's not as good of a story as it would have been if he had gotten first place.
But $10 million though is still a pretty good story too. Which is the funny thing, is that someone winning $10 million doesn't make for a big enough story in Sam's eyes. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, probably the best part of the documentary is just the one drop stuff. I mean, they actually were on his rail and filming him during it. So, we see him a little bit talking between hands and going to his rail, and also just everybody with him. Like, if he wins, it's going to be this huge party. We all know he's going to do it. And then he wins $10 million and he's, disappointed. It reminds me of that Norman Chad line after Tuan Lam lost in 2007 main event. He goes, "Now there's one unhappy multimillionaire." I just love that line, and it's a perfect line. And in this case, you've won 8 figures. Dude, it's okay.
Yeah. No, and so again, I found this ultimately to be kind of forgettable too. Not nearly as bad as the next one we're going to be talking about, but nonetheless, Sam Trickett really. My only prior knowledge of him was his 2 television prominence spots in both of the one drops that were on ESPN, 2012 and 2014. So again, he seems like a very nice guy. If I talked to him and met him in a casino, I'd love to see what he was like in person. Still, I think he's a nice guy, but I just don't think that this film is required viewing for the poker fan.
Yeah, and again, as you mentioned, Sam Trickett's gone away from the game. He's not as big of a name as he was in the early 2010s. If he still was a big name, this would be, a little bit more relevant. But, poker's a very fast moving game. You have to adjust quickly. He even talked about in the documentary that people were adjusting to his game and to his style. And also he's, spending $275,000 on Ferraris. So maybe that's where some of the money went. Yeah, I mean, it loses its relevance now that Sam Trickett's moved away from the game. Again, totally nice guy, like you said. I'm sure if we had coffee with him, he'd be a good guy. If he wants to be on the podcast, just let us know. We'll have you on the podcast. I know he's watching us.
I know, right? Absolutely.
Poker Sams have to, stay connected. We have a shared vibe. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, fairly by the numbers, nothing special. If you like Sam Trickett, watch it. Otherwise, you can just skip it.
Yes. Moving on to number 3 in our list here, we have the video entitled "Ireland's $1 Million Poker Player, the Gambler." A 2013 video film, whatever, what have you, 52 minutes long. So we're getting almost to that 1 hour mark here. Talking about John O'Shea, an Irish poker player who I actually had not known about prior to watching this. So I was, mildly intrigued to see what we would learn about him. The film opens up a little bit of WPT footage at the start, and then it Really just kind of covers him over the span of a couple of major poker events, and concluding with a main event run, which is kind of nice, I guess. But this one is probably my least favorite of the four that we're discussing right now. That was my concluding thoughts here. Let's get into your thoughts here, though.
Yeah, I mean, John's an interesting guy. I mean, he's not a super big name professional, but he seems to hold his own okay. He made the final table at the WPT World Championship. He breaks the main event run, as you mentioned, makes it to day four, cashes for 52K. I believe this was in 2012. So, he ran fairly deep. Good for him. Yeah, there's a couple little things in terms of the style of documentary I like. They managed to get interviews with him while he was at the table, as he's playing these tournaments, and he'll, kind of just be leaning back in his chair, and he'll turn to the camera and be like, "Oh, this guy over here is doing this thing," etc. They have these like little reenactments where it's actually him sitting in the chair, and you see his cards, and he's got like pocket threes or ace king or whatever, and you see him turning over his cards. I thought that was kind of cute. But yeah, he's not a super interesting person. Again, seems to be a decent enough player, even though again he's not even like one of Ireland's top ranking players. I mean, Donegal OD and Andy Black and Ian OD and all these other people have made more money than him and had splashier careers than him. He's another guy who he starts playing poker in college, realizes he can make more money in poker, and goes and becomes a poker player. He plays golf. He has dinner with his parents. Again, seems like a nice enough guy, but just, I don't really get why this documentary was made. I don't really understand why the focus was on him. Clearly some thought was put into this. It wasn't boring, not really boring.
I thought it was kind of boring, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it was, not really boring. I'll just, yeah, not really much to say. Yeah.
I would say, I mean, the only style that I really maybe mildly appreciated in this entire video was the editing style when he was describing a hand he played. They kind of cut to like some, not stock, but kind of like recreation footage of like a couple of cards being like dealt and then flipped over and stuff. So that was, some effort was put into the hand breakdowns that O'Shea was describing. But again, there's maybe like 3 or 4 scenes of him golfing and just just sitting around. It's not really a narrative. Like it's one thing if we're talking about like he talks to the camera. We're gonna discuss 1 year of my poker prowess. My goal is to win $1 million by the end of this year, or my goal is to win a bracelet, or my goal, there's no, there's no journey that we're taking with O'Shea as far as the events that we're watching him play and do mildly okay or hanging in there to day two or something. There's really no narrative drive here. It's just kind of an aimless sort of, well, we're just going to film him over the course of a few days here, and we'll just see what happens. And again, it goes back to my idea of the story versus the execution of the story. There's not really a story with O'Shea. There's a little bit of the origin story of Sam Trickett, so I guess there's that. I suppose I don't think the style of telling those stories or lack thereof is really much to it. So again, if you don't have either of those two elements here, you're really going to have to have some really good footage to get my attention. And I just didn't have it. And also, right after the main event, he finishes. I think it was day 5 actually. Day 5, he wins about $52,000, and he finishes like 150th or 160th or something in that ballpark there. So a little bit after Negreanu busts actually that year or so. The film just kind of ends. It doesn't end with like a narration like this was my life. I hope or this I did okay in the main event. I proved to myself I could do. There's just no like ending of any sort. The video just ends, and that was a big letdown for me too, for something that I was already kind of not intrigued by in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned that he was down 400K in Vegas, just blowing money a lot. So cashing out for 52K, he's still down $350,000. You'd think there'd be a little bit more there. I mean, it is kind of interesting that he is open about saying like, yeah, I just lost $350,000 this year, which as somebody who makes a lot less than that every year, it just blows my mind. That'd be a little bit more interesting to have an epilogue of sorts, him going back to Ireland trying to figure things out. Does he need to work another job in order to make money? What does he do to make money? Yeah, I mean, there's there's scenes of him betting on sports, and there's scenes on him training with people, and there's scenes with him, yeah, just a lot of golf stuff. Just a lot of stuff, one after the other, another scene, another tournament, another this, another that. Just not much there.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying he's not a nice guy or that he
Yeah.
wouldn't maybe to talk with that for an hour at a dinner table. Okay, but just from what we see on the screen, just probably one of the lesser unique characters or personas that we've seen in any of these documentaries.
Yeah, and he hasn't really done anything since his main event run. So I don't know if he's still playing the game or not. If he wants to be on the podcast list, that's the refrain of this. If you want to be on the podcast, but yeah, I mean, just he's again seems like a nice guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy to talk to, but I just don't understand why they selected him. Probably just because it was an Irish film crew and they wanted an Irish poker player. But there's again so many other Irish poker players you can talk about, or have him be one segment out of several other, have a Irish poker player documentary. He's one of 3 or 4 or 5 people you feature in it, like in the documentary we reviewed last time with Phil Hellmuth and the other guys.
Yeah, Poker Kings. Yeah, I think that would have been a much better idea, but maybe they just wanted to pick someone in case he was the next young upstart Irish, pro. I don't know, but if anybody was involved in that production, give us a shout out. Give us a shout. We would love to hear about the etiology of those decisions.
Yeah.
But this leads us into our final film of these 4. This one's definitely a full-blown poker documentary. It's called Dreamers: A New Age, a 90-minute long video. I think released this year. So again, we've had 2 fairly lengthy poker documentaries come out this year that have a lot of similarities, ironically, with some of the characters involved. This one kind of covers the company called Above the Felt, a production company meant to sort of usher in a new age of poker coverage in the world. Some of the big names that are sort of headlining this group include guys like Moneymaker, Jamie Kerstetter, Rampage Poker, among many others that get an interview by Matt Berkey, of course, too, from Sell for Why. And so this one is definitely very well shot. It's probably the most impressively shot of these 4. And it would rank pretty high up on all the ones that we've covered, really, I think, given its recent release. But much like the ones when we already discussed, my attention kind of wavered in and out throughout the watching of this movie. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so as I said at the start of this is really a promotional movie for Above the Felt, which I mean sounds like a cool company. They're essentially a marketing and events agency for poker players trying to make connections in the industry. I'm somebody who works in the marketing world. I'm a copywriter, so that's it definitely seems like a good idea. It sounds very interesting. And you have interviews with the founder of Above the Felt, and then everybody that Ben just mentioned, and a bunch of other people as well are, I guess, associates or clients of Above the Felt. And a lot of the documentary is just interviews of these people talking to the camera, explaining how they got into poker and what they like about working at Above the Felt and all that. And in between, you get sort of little clips of them playing at the WPT and little things here and there. But it really is just a promotional movie. And sure, it sells me on Above the Felt. It's like, okay, if I were a poker player of some stature, I would go and work for them and see what happens. All these people, again, seem nice. They all have a very nice rapport with each other. But, there's, again, not a whole lot of there. I don't feel the need to watch this documentary again. I don't feel the need to, watch little clips of it. The stuff that really interested me was them actually playing the poker tournaments. And nothing really happens in the poker until the very end, which was kind of neat. But, that's about it.
There was 2 things or 3 things I appreciated in this movie in 90 minutes. So that's not a great batting average to start off with. The first thing was we finally got to fill in the dots with the advertising for Sell for Why during the 2021 main event broadcast, because there would be those bits of like Matt Berkey sitting at the table, interesting spot wearing headphones. And that actually tied into one of the hallmark programs of Sell for Why, where everyone wears noise canceling headphones, and when it's their turn, the sound for their headphones turns off and everyone else's turns on, so that they can describe what they are thinking in that spot, and then it goes to the next person. When it's kind of like an educational tool. So we briefly see a flash of that, and that finally filled in the gap. Okay, so that's what that ad for that main event was. So again, that's kind of like a weird detail that I just kind of appreciate because I'm filling in the gaps between multiple sell for Y advertisements. So again, if that's even a positive, I don't know. And then the second thing I appreciated was this section called "Who You Got Heads Up."
Yeah.
Because this video has timestamps in it, so you can kind of skip around and see what I'm talking about if you wanted to. It's where they describe who in the above the felt team they would want to play heads up in a, for money or for fun. And pretty much everyone disses Moneymaker. Everyone just picks him because they'll have no respect for his game. And then ironically, when it gets to Moneymaker's interview in that section, he says, "I don't fear any of them." So it really kind of fed into the tug of war of being overconfident or just not caring about who you're playing against. So it's kind of a funny contrast, I guess. So we're talking maybe like 3 minutes of everybody giving their take on that question. So that was, I guess, mildly funny given the reputation that sometimes those main event champions have from that era of poker, with like Jamie Gold or Moneymaker. Everyone doesn't respect their game, even though Moneymaker has done pretty well in the main event the last couple of years. So you have to wonder if maybe they need to give him an ounce more respect, given that he is putting up, compared to a lot of poker pros nowadays that don't cash the main event at all. And then I guess, as you mentioned, the third part I appreciate, I guess, was actually having one of the spotlighted interviewed players do well in an event, which
Yeah.
is in the 25K event that they discussed towards the end in the last few minutes. That at least was like, finally, we have a documentary where someone is in a tournament and actually makes it super, super deep. In this case, winning the whole thing. So I guess that was nice to finally kind of put a coda on that sort of lack of payoff in that sort of coverage of a tournament like this.
Yeah, because they hype up at the beginning the WPT World Championship that everyone's going to be there, and they have their whole crew are rolling out, and they're all teaming up and all going to do really well. And then by day two, they've all busted. So I mean, that kind of just fell flat. And then Jamie also made the final table of the ladies event at the World Poker Championship and got sixth place. So that was kind of nice, I guess. But yeah, I mean, Rampage Poker of all people just goes into the 25K event and wins, which was pretty cool. He squeaked his way into the money and then managed to just maneuver his way up to the top, which is nice. And it's kind of interesting to hear Matt Berkey talk about this and him say like Rampage isn't going to realize how big this is until later on. He's just won nearly $1 million. This is going to change his career that he's won this big title. Obviously, Rampage has also won a bracelet, so it's kind of interesting to talk about. But yeah, I mean, they all come off very affably. Everybody who's featured in it, it's hard to dislike anybody. I'd never heard of Jamon Burden, so I'd be tempted to check out his coverage and see what his like. I've never heard of him before. Yeah, they all seem like nice folks. I wish them all well. I wish above the felt well. But yeah, I mean, it's 60 minutes of promoting this company I wasn't aware of until now. And then, 25 minutes of everyone failing, all these great poker players not doing well at poker. And then 5 minutes of one guy making a deep run, yeah.
No, it's funny. So I did go to their website after I watched this documentary, and I was like, oh, maybe I can contact them. But they make you give a company like in the contact like form to fill out online. So I'm like, well, we don't really have a company, so I can't really contact them. But it would have been kind of funny if I had just been like, hey, we're a podcast. Why don't we team up here for like an interview with somebody? But I'll take my chances in messaging these players individually versus their corporation here.
But I am a freelance writer, so if above the felt people need a search engine optimization writer, this guy right here.
That'd be a fun little crossover there.
Yeah.
But ultimately, again, just not to confuse our listeners here to our opinion of this film, it's a pretty uninteresting documentary for the most part. I mean, just the number of interviews, again, kind of like with All In, the Search for the American Dream, when they just have so many interviews and not any of them are particularly personal or insightful. I mean, there's a couple of them are a little bit personal. Some of them talks about her lowest point in poker, I guess. Berkey discusses his family dynamics growing up. There's a little bit of personal information just divulged in these interviews, but they're not part of a narrative structure of we're going to talk about these topics first because it's going to lead into this next topic and it's going to get into the overall message of the movie. It's just more kind of a let's just get a bunch of interviews, put them together, and play some poker, put it together, put them all in the same film, and then hopefully someone will enjoy the film. It's not really a composed documentary, and it's just more of almost like some documentary skits combined together.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting moment of the documentary for me was just during the Jeff Platt segment while he's talking. There's this footage of him commentating with Jamie Kerstetter, and it's in this like weird back room. Like it's really small. Like I don't have claustrophobia or anything, but it just looks so small and cramped. Like they barely have room to get into their chairs. Like, where is this? There's just like TV screens up where they just, are commenting on the footage. It's like, can't they get a nicer environment to do this in? Yeah, that's the most interesting thing from this documentary for me. Yeah, I mean, it's a promotional documentary. They clearly got all this footage. They want to advertise each of these people individually. Like All In, they don't have the discretion to build a story and get all this footage out, so they just threw it all in the documentary.
Yeah, so ultimately, with these 4 films, I found the lack of strong narratives in them a real detriment to their overall quality. A couple of them are pretty well shot, and I appreciate, just not being afraid to film something and then just release it and let people interpret their own, takeaways from it. But compared to some of the really solid documentaries we discussed in past episodes, I was let down by all 4. Really, I can't really recommend any of them, to be fair. Maybe if I could like a video editor and cut out like a few minutes from each one, I could maybe point to almost having a highlight from that. But really, overall, I think these are all skippable unless you just want to watch everything that we've watched on our podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that's, poker is a hard subject to portray in a movie or a documentary because it takes place over so much time. And, how do you tell the story of a tournament, really? You don't know who's going to win or who's going to lose. You have to edit it after the fact. And, we've talked about in the past, like it would have been a lot better on a narrative level if John Hesp had won in 2017. It would have been a lot better on a narrative level if George Holmes had won in 21. But cards just go the other way. Luck and skill go the other way. So as such, you can't really build that story that we're looking for in these documentaries. You have to either just kind of have this ensemble where you interview 10 people and you hope one of them makes it to the end, or something else. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, but again, we're as past bad documentaries that we've reviewed. I usually said I was kind of glad I still watched it anyway. I can't say I was happy I still watched these after the fact, because maybe I'm just jaded from having watched so many of these damn things over time. But I don't know. It's just maybe it's time for us to move on from documentaries for a while here, and maybe
Yeah.
other viewing experiences.
Yeah, I'm kind of just done with documentaries, frankly. Yeah, I mean, none of them I would give a 5 out of 5 rating to. A couple maybe might get like a 3 or a 4, and then there's
out of 10. Out of 10.
what
You said out of 5 out of 5. 5 out of
out
10.
of 5. Yeah, I mean, I give things out of 5. I don't give out of 10 because there's no difference between a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
It's like if it's
All right.
good, it's a 4.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, a couple like Inside Underground Poker is like so bad it's good. Like I would watch that again. That was really funny. But yeah, most part just very forgettable stuff because again, poker is just so hard to portray in a fictional movie as we've seen or in a documentary. You just can't really tell a good story there. So if y'all have any suggestions for anything we should be talking about, whether it's YouTube channels or documentaries that you've made or something else, let us know.
Yeah, but there has been a couple poker newsworthy stories. I think that we need to discuss here. High Stakes Duel 4 has been announced. We have and also an undercard, ironically, kind of like very much fighting boxing. They have the title fight and then the undercard. So in this case, we have Daniel Negreanu against Eric Pearson.
Oh, okay.
All right. The main fight. I think that's happening next week. I think May 8th, and round 2 is May 9th. So that's pretty cool. So I'll be happy to watch that and discuss a few. And then the undercard is a somewhat of a rematch, both from Poker Night in America and from YouTube, where we have Mike Matusow against Sean Deeb.
Really? Okay.
Yes, that's the undercard. So they're only playing for I think it's like $10,000 each versus the escalating buy-ins for High Stakes Duel, the 50K, 100K, 200K, etc. But so that is quite the combo there. You kind of have a mixture of some classic main events, Worlds of Poker veterans against a couple of. I'm not sure how old Harrison is, but he's been kind of a prominent star very, very recently in the poker world. So a nice couple of matches there. I'll be very excited to watch, and no doubt we can discuss them after the fact, in a upcoming episode for sure.
If Sean Deeb slurls Mattisau, I will laugh my butt off. That would just be so perfect. But yeah, absolutely. That sounds interesting.
And maybe now we can just maybe make a prediction who we like in both of those fights. I personally can't bet against my man Negreanu
Yeah.
versus anyone who's in Hellmuth. So I'm going to go Negreanu for round one.
Yep.
And then I think I reserve the right to watch round one before I decide round two. But I'm more willing to accept a potential Negreanu loss in round two than round one, I think, given that person has to adjust and maybe someone leveling war overthink something. So I like Negreanu in round one, and I'm gonna go for the upset. I like Mattisau in his match against Sean Deeb. For some reason, I just feel like he's gonna pull it off. How about you?
No, I'm gonna go Deeb. Sorry. yeah, Negreanu wins round one. I mean, person, ran very well against Hellmuth, obviously, in his heads-up match, and screwed with his head so bad like that. Hellmuth just tilted it all off. If you haven't seen that heads-up of Hellmuth and Pearson, I mean, it's terrible on an etiquette level. Like, it's absolutely terrible. I don't stand for those tactics. Will Kassouf would be like, okay, that's enough. But yeah, it's too funny. I mean, that's just hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with Sean Deeb just because Mattisau, he's a bit spotty lately. I feel Deeb's a little bit more of a even keeled poker player. He can sort of wait his turn, find the right moments to get Mattisau in, and then I think Mattisau could recalibrate and win a round two if there was a rematch. I'm willing to keep my mind open to that. But yeah, I'm gonna go Negreanu and Deeb. That's what I'm gonna say.
Fair enough. We'll see if we split or if we both are right, or one of us is right in those predictions there. And then I did notice that Will Kassouf's relatively active Facebook page. He recently played a couple of satellites for I think a WPT main event tournaments. Mm-hmm. So he's won 3 satellites to that tournament. So because you can take the winnings in cash instead of if you already have a seat. So his trademark slogan is "In for the min, win for the max." So he's already has like a large ROI on off of those satellite winnings. So again, I follow him on Facebook, so it's just kind of fun to see his style where he'll play like a $200 satellite, win like 5,000. He won 3 satellites. I mean, that's really impressive. I don't know how he pulls this off, but it's really, really cool that he does that. And hopefully we'll see him in the main event this year. That'd be pretty cool. But he's doing pretty well this year, so I'd be shocked if he didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, he wins these tournaments by he goes all in and then he palms his chips and runs away so that they can't get an accurate stat.
He had an interview with Doug Polk on Doug Polk's channel about that, where he defended himself, and he did own up to one drunken mistake where he I think it was like a roulette thing or something, like a friend's chip, £100 chip or something. But then he claims total innocence on the other controversies. So I don't know. I like to believe in people. I really do. That's just my personality. But I don't know. I'm definitely a bit more in the middle compared to like a Robbie Liu situation. I don't know. But at least the important takeaway is he's still not banned from playing poker, so we'll still be able to see him in action at work in future events. That's the important thing, right?
Yeah, hopefully he won't get punched in the face or something, but I have a feeling that's coming one day. Someone's just gonna clock him. Not that he should be clocked. I'm not saying he should be. I'm just saying I wish him, I guess, well, but I hope for his safety he can kind of tone the antics down a little bit.
I mean, when you have players like Shakan, who was accused of like sexual misconduct or something like that, this is let's be fair, this is definitely on the much more minor side of
course,
controversy in the grand scheme of the world. But nonetheless, I can only hope that maybe if Kassouf really is 100% innocent, he takes steps to actively avoid being caught up in controversy, because once you kind of have that troublemaker moniker, it's really hard to shake it off.
Exactly. Yeah. Very true.
But guys, I think that about finishes this episode of our podcast. Thank you for listening. If you have a chance to watch On These Better, why I don't recommend it. But if you want to maybe find out if you have the same thoughts as us, then let us know in the comment section. As always, let us know your thoughts and let us know if you want to be a part of a future interview or podcast with us. We're always looking for new people to learn from.
Yeah, and as Ben mentioned, we are going to see the main event this year. We are not competing in the main event. Adam Grossack may be competing, so would be rooting him on and just there to sightsee and see Las Vegas. So, if you have any suggestions for places we should go to or anything we should do while we're there? We still haven't quite worked out the dates yet. We'll work that out soon, and we'll, we're happy to go wherever you want us to go. If you want us to do like a Las Vegas review of restaurants or whatever, we can do that. Whatever you'd like.
Yeah, and if any rich billionaire wants to stake us in the main event, we'll donate whatever he wants to any charity. We'll wear whatever hat you want us to wear. That'd be kind of funny. Or if anybody listening wants to be a part of maybe like a backing initiative, if you want to back us partially, we can make a GoFundMe or a stake me or something and get that rolling. Hey, if you want us to do that, let us know. It'd be pretty cool. I'd play so tight. If on the bubble, I'm folding pocket kings. Okay, so I would respect your money 100%.
Or if you want to give us press passes so we can go and do whatever we want.
I was able to do that 2 years ago. Actually, I didn't need a press pass or a visitor pass, so I don't think that's a problem actually, Sam.
Yeah, but if you would still like to give us like official accreditation or whatever, and maybe pay us to go to the main event. I'm a freelance employee, so I determine my own hours. So if you want to put me up in a penthouse, want to give me $1 million. Yeah, whatever.
Anyway, guys,
what contracts?
Joking aside, we're only a couple of months really away from the main event, and even less from the World of Poker actually starting. So we'll have so much to discuss very shortly. But until next time, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, and enjoy your poker on TV.
Send your trinkets to us.
Bye, guys.